Good morning, everybody. We are going to the next set of narrative techniques. And in this, I'm going to talk to you about epigraph, epiphany, anthropomorphism, parody, and pastiche. So these are narrative techniques along with the ones that I have already done: anachronism, allusion, symbols, irony, and deus ex machina. Now, as I mentioned before, a narration is what the author or writer says or writes. So these narrative techniques are methods and devices that writers make use of to narrate their stories effectively. So we are going to talk about a few popular techniques, and the first one in this is epigraph. And what is epigraph? Epigraph is basically a short quotation or saying at the beginning of a chapter or book. So you must have read in certain books and chapters, the when the chapter starts, on top of it you will have a small line or one or two lines. Now this is what you call an epigraph. This usually might be a quotation. This might be the sayings from another book. This epigraph, this is called an epigraph. This epigraph serves to suggest a theme that the book or the chapter explores. So with that small epigraph, you will be able to know approximately what is going to happen in the coming in that particular chapter. So for example, you've got John Fowles' book, The French Lieutenant's Woman, or the book that is shown in the PPT, or Han Pamuk's The Black Book. And all this, the chapter begins with an epigraph. So have a look into epigraphs and see how you will be able to present an example. So what is an epigraph? An epigraph is a short quotation or saying at the beginning of a book or chapter. Each epigraph serves to suggest that theme of that book. So this is one sort of narration that authors or writers use. Now, another one in this, another type of narration that authors use is what you call epiphany. Now, epiphany is basically generally a biblical term. Now, here actually is a manifestation or showing forth. A manifestation of God's presence within the created universe, specifically the revelation of the Magi of Christ's divinity. Now, this is something which you would be generally having in what we call the Christmas theme. So it is said that a manifestation happened, according to Christians, the birth of Christ. And it was at that time when these three kings, they wanted to visit Christ. As they were going in the desert, naturally it would be very difficult to find the location. And so you see there was a bright firmament, there was a bright star in the skies. Now this is what you call a manifestation, or some sort of a divine power which shows. Here actually it was the location of the birth of Christ, where Christ was born. So that sort of a manifestation is done. And this epiphany, this sort of technique is also used by writers. In certain writings, you might see what you call a halo, a sort of round on certain characters. This character would be having a sort of angelic form. So in literature also, epiphany means a sudden, overwhelming insight or revelation evoked by a commonplace object, gesture, or moment. And I think we can say in a way that that sort of Minnal Madhavan, where he was suddenly struck by lightning. That was a sort of an overwhelming or a manifestation. Suddenly he turns from a normal human being to a extra normal human being. So like this, James Joyce's short stories and novels, contain epiphanies or lyrical moments of insights that encapsulate the essence of the tale. So if you read James Joyce's novels, you will find occasionally this sort of manifestation. And the same way, other authors that use these manifestation would be Catherine Mansfield, William Faulkner, Virginia Woolf. All of them have made effective use of this epiphany in works of fiction. So have a look at epiphany. And as I told you, this would be the manifestation of this would be the manifestation, that divine intervention, or that showing forth. This sort of technique is used generally most often by James Joyce in his short stories. Also, Catherine Mansfield, William Faulkner, Virginia Woolf have also made effective use of what you call epiphany. Now, the next one is anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is found on page 26 in your textbook. Now, anthropomorphism is attribution of human characteristics, emotions, and behaviors to non-human entities like animals or inanimate objects. I think the best example for this, if you have read, is Animal Farm. Animal Farm, George Orwell uses anthropomorphism to a great extent. Even this, if the picture shows Aesop's fables, I'm sure you would have read The Hare and the Tortoise. Now here, that sort of attribution of human characteristics is shown here. The hare running almost like a human being, the tortoise also running like a human being. We know that all these things are not possible. But then when the author gives or narrates certain human characteristics into them, or gives certain human emotions or behaviors to these characters, they sort of talk to us. And that sort of a narration by an author is called anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism. You need to understand the word anthropomorphism. So in anthropomorphism, the non-human entity really possesses human traits. So you can see more of human traits in such characters, which actually they might be animals, or they might even be inanimate objects. But attribution of human characteristics is a phenomenon which is a technique that writers use, and it's called anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism. And that's the next one. Again, another technique that authors use or writers use is called parody. A parody is basically a mocking imitation of the characteristic features of work, distinctive style of a particular author, or the salient features of a literary genre. So here also one of the best examples would be Cervantes's Don Quixote, Don Quixote or Don Quixote. So Don Quixote by Cervantes is basically they're making fun. They're making fun of the medieval romances. So you can see a knight, K-N-I-G-H-T. He is dressed and he is apparently going to war. And as he is going to war, he finds a huge windmill. You've seen these windmills. So he's trying to fight against that. He's thinking that that is sort of a supernatural creature. So like this, it is making fun. It is mocking these medieval romances, love affairs and all that happened during the olden days. Cervantes is making fun of it using these characters in the novel Don Quixote. So have a look at the summary of Don Quixote so that you'll be able to know what parody is. In the same way, another particular novel, Henry Fielding's Shamila. Shamila is a parody of Samuel Richardson's novel Pamela. See, even the name is more of a parody. Pamela is the original novel, but Henry Fielding made another novel called Shamila, which is a parody, which is maybe mocking certain things, a mocking imitation of it. So like this, I think nowadays we've got lots of imitations of objects, but at the same time, this sort of imitation by writers was very prevalent, and this particular type of writing is known as parody. And parody is what you call a mocking imitation of the characteristic features of a particular work. Then we have the next technique, which is called pastiche. Now, pastiche is a text that borrows heavily from other texts. Pastiche should not be confused with plagiarism, because pastiche involves open and intentional borrowing with no deceptive intention. So here, actually, what is happening is certain sections and paragraphs are literally taken from another text and then used here. And one of the best examples for this would be John Fowles' The Friend Lieutenant's Woman. So here, certain huge paragraphs are taken, certain lines are taken, and the author has said that I'm borrowing from these things, but this should not be confused with plagiarism. In fact, this is what you call pastiche in literary terms.